One day in my sophomore high school English class, my teacher brought up a concept of something he feared my generation, Generation Z, was slowly falling victim to. Something that he referred to as phantom intelligence. Now, I really didn't understand what he meant at the time, but this phantom intelligence, he explained, was the result of a generation of people being born without knowing what it was like to exist without the internet. This generation based concept revolved around the idea that people would soon confuse the ability to pull out our phones and look up the answer to any argument or any piece of discourse, to have the entire history of all human information in our pockets, to settle any disagreement with just the tap of our fingers. That we would confuse all of that with the ability to rack our own brains to rely on information and concepts we actually knew and that which lie within ourselves. This metaphor stuck with me for the longest time, but I never really understood it. However, as I went through college, grew older, developed a frontal lobe, and I experienced more conversations of all ranges and tones, I began to understand what he had meant. Although, for someone like myself and anyone in a similar situation, I believe it goes much deeper than the initial definition lets on. For the past year and a half, I've been dealing with a constant medical issue that has restricted me heavily from doing my favorite thing. It's something that I think about every waking second of the day, every night before I go to sleep, and every morning I wake up. It's working out. You see, it used to be my favorite thing, and obviously you have to take my word for it, you know, given the fact that you can't see me, but I was in fantastic shape before about a year and a half ago, which led me down a medical journey, concluding with a surgery that has made me unable to work out for about a month. This is not the point I'm trying to make, however, as I'm merely painting the picture that due to a recent event and the fact that I don't start work for another month, I've had a lot of time on my hands to not do my favorite thing and to simply sit here and think. But if I'm being a lot more honest with you, sit here and scroll, sit here and consume, sit here and watch. Now, listen, I love reels, TikToks, and shorts as much as the next guy. But whenever I have any semblance of free time on my hand, which right now is an overwhelming amount, it becomes very clear that I'm addicted to consuming content on the internet. And now that I've graduated college and my sole responsibility of what I have to do with my free time lies upon myself and not that of my college curriculum, I see myself so engrossed in my phone that it's almost numbing. Now, I have blockers set up to stop me from going on Instagram and TikTok past an hour, and I think that I hit that block every single day. I can always put those blockers down and go on longer and if I want, and sometimes I do. But most of the time I turn to YouTube on my phone, and after that I hit that block. I just go watch YouTube on my laptop. I try to convince myself that I'm being almost productive by watching YouTube videos about how not to waste your 20s, videos on personal finance, videos about finding yourself, videos on how to feel unstuck, how to journal more efficiently, how to optimize your time, how to not be a failure, how to be a human. And right then in that moment, when I found myself watching videos on what it meant to be a human, what it meant to be a person, how to feel, how to think, that's when I realized that I'd fallen victim to this phantom intelligence. However, I wasn't in an argument or some sort of public discourse with anyone else, but I was in a battle with myself. And I had convinced myself that the answers to my problems were out there on the internet and not within myself. So I started looking inward. Where were the answers to my issues? Of course, at first I reached for my phone to scroll Instagram, then YouTube, then put on a podcast. Then I decided to go for a walk, a silent one, to allow me to think through the point I had reached with myself. So I could really anchor myself in this moment and not fall back into my self destructive consumer state. But of course, my attention span could not handle this silence, so I opted for a Daft Punk album instead. But I still began to look inward. What did I really want? What hole was consumption cheaply filling? What was I so afraid of? Earlier this year, I had read Alfred Adler's proposition that all problems are interpersonal problems. And I actually read that idea in the book The Courage to Be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. This is where my mind would start, as I really liked that book and it had resonated with me to the point in which that every single time I have encountered an issue that lies within myself, I ask myself, would this problem exist if I was the only person on the planet? And immediately something inside me said, no. And from there I went. From that thought, I continued down the literal road in my neighborhood on my walk and the metaphorical one in my head. I've wanted to make content for the longest time. From when I was a little kid begging my parents for an Elgato 360 so I could record Minecraft videos, to making TikToks with my friends throughout high school, at my very small high school. However, when I got to my very large college and my brain developed more and I realized that every one of the 50,000 students around me had a developed brain of their own and could perceive me and form their own opinion of me, I stopped making those videos. But I didn't stop making videos to save time for school. I just replaced that production with consumption. It took me 4 years to come back to making videos. There lies a small series of videos I made that are all on this channel, all low quality and all very impromptu, made simply to produce a video, made simply to check a box. These were great to establish a habit out of content making, but it really wasn't what I wanted to make. Within each of them, there is a degree of half-assery, which may or may not be subconscious, with the purpose of not putting too much effort into something that could fail. I set my effort low in order to keep my expectations low. In that lies a mindset of entitlement, a way of thinking that I am entitled to success simply because I do something every single day, even if it is not my best effort, and not something I myself would watch. I have seen this sort of self-sabotage in my ability to produce creatively before, as throughout high school and college I wrote a lot of poetry. Now, these poems were a real genuine coping mechanism for me to cope with a lot of emotions that I was experiencing at the time. They were also a way of being able to conceal my work behind a fake veil of privacy. Poetry as a medium inherently sounds like something that should be kept much more private than a YouTube video. But fundamentally, both were serving the same purpose. Except one has no audience, no other perceptions, no outside judgment to be afraid of. And the other has a possible 2.6 billion perceptions and outside judgments. Now, my love of poetry and writing does find a way to aid me here, as when I looked inside myself, something I found that I was missing since I graduated was long, deep work sessions in front of a computer. Call me crazy, but I really do enjoy sitting down and focusing on something and having a clear goal in mind and creating something completely brand new that never existed before. And as a chemical engineering student, I would do this quite often. I would go into the computer lab to work on very open-ended project problems that required solutions that didn't exist yet. I would be in that computer lab sometimes for 8 to 12 hours. I would listen to DJ sets and produce creatively through these project solutions. I hadn't taken a step back to realize that even though I really hated doing these long homework creative problem sessions because, they were for school projects, so I had actually missed this type of expression, this type of work, this outlet that required a lot of effort. So I, went to YouTube and even worse, ChatGPT to figure out that, you know, what were some things that I could sit in front of a computer for hours and work on? And I mean, I just get a load of some of these answers. You could A, learn how to code. Absolutely not. B, learn Excel. I don't think I would ever learn Excel if I'm not being paid to do it. I could learn personal finance, which is really cool, but it's not something that I want to do by myself. I have so many people around me who can actually help me with this. Or I could learn Power BI. And if you don't know what Power BI is, that's awesome. And I'm really jealous. Now, at face value, all these things are A, monetizable to some degree, B, actively help me in my current career path, And you might say, hey, maybe you're just making excuses because these things require actual effort and focus, and you just don't got it like that. And you just don't want to succeed badly enough. And I would say you are absolutely correct. Looking within, I don't see any version of myself that wants to do this or spend time on any of these things. But then again, I could waste my time watching a million YouTube videos on how to code with Claude or how to set up the perfect Excel spreadsheet to do my finances. I could call those hours productive despite having done nothing that I found within those videos. I really could do that. So much so, in fact, that I've done it a million times now. So I kept telling myself, wow, I really don't like this. I really don't like that. I'm really not interested in this. After watching so many videos on things I really just didn't want to do. And I just did not listen to myself. Again, I just kept looking for the answers. And where did I look for them? Well, of course, on YouTube. But again, I stopped and I checked myself and I looked inward. And I relied on myself for what I could do to fill this gap. And it felt like I was standing in a room with the answer just painted all over the walls. I needed to write. And what can you do with a keyboard and a monitor completely for free? You can write. And what can you do with those things you've written? You can make YouTube videos with them. All of the previous trial and error that had led me to where I am right now. Speaking a script that I wrote, talking into a computer and creatively producing. This culmination took me a while to reach, like a really, really, really long time to reach. And it might take you a while to reach, and your journey will probably look completely different, and so will your culmination. But don't take this video as an answer for your problem of what you need to do. Rather, think of it as you viewing my answer. My answer that was, in fact, not found on YouTube, but it was rather for me to put it on YouTube. Thanks for watching.